This is the seventh lecture under the NF 1. Most of the virtual participants are very familiar with our Saturday webinars. Since September 2020, without fail, we had organized so many webinars on environment and biodiversity. We have one permanent Telegram group and all are requested to join the Telegram group Biodiversity Webinars. We have more than 630 members in this group. Now I have to say something about our team because some of you are new to us, I think. Botany Department, Shiva Bharati Mahavidyalaya, Jhargram, GGDC, Lalgor, Jhargram, Botany Department Head, Dr. Debabrata Das, and Drishtikon Organization, Pashpura, West Bengal, are the teammates of these webinars. Myself, Dr. Pompi Ghosh, Head Department of Botany, Shiva Bharati Mahavidyalaya, again cordially invite all of you to hear today's webinar. When the total world is sick and need quick recovery, we want to hear the view from our student, Ms. Krisha, Bachelor of Pharmacy, Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Siddhapuddur, Tamil Nadu, on an overview of allopathic medicine. So, welcome, my dear Krisha. Now you can start your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just start presenting now.
Welcome. Please start.
Is my screen visible, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, Krisha, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Everything is okay. Now you start.
Okay, fine, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I'm Krisha K, doing second year Bachelor of Pharmacy at Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. It's an immense pleasure to meet you all at this wonderful webinar in day 7. At this juncture, I'd like to thank Dr. Debabrata Das, Admin, Flora and Fauna, Asia Facebook Group, Associate Professor, Department of Botany, Lalgar Government College, Jhargram, West Bengal, and Dr. Pampi Ghosh, Head Department of Botany, SBM, Jhargram, West Bengal, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak on this webinar. On this webinar, I am going to share interesting points in the field of allopathic medicines, their advantages and some of their side effects too. I'll also be sharing latest information on COVID-19, their vaccines used and importance of getting vaccinated. So the time duration is going to be 1.5 hours, where one hour I'll be discussing on the topic and half an hour you can raise your questions or doubts regarding the topic. So why wait? Let's get started. So at first, what is allopathic medicine? So the word allopathy is derived from the Greek word allos plus pathos, which means other than the disease. So here, allos means opposite and pathos means to suffer. So the word roughly refers to treat a symptom with its opposite, as it is often done in mainstream medicines. For example, we take anti-inflammatory agents for inflammation, similarly antipyretics for allergy and antipyretics for fever. So all these drugs work in an opposite way with that of the disease and cures the symptom. So this is the mechanism behind an allopathic medicine, and it is a drug-oriented methodology which relies on hypothesis, experimentation, and the result of the experiment. It is received by majority of the nations around the globe, and we commonly call it as a drug therapy. It mainly focuses on suppressing the signs and symptoms of the disease. Okay, now let's see the evolution of allopathic medicine. So starting from ancient era, followed by empiric era, industrialization era, patient care era, biotechnology and genetic engineering, medicine got evoluted to its powerful dimension. So first, starting with ancient era. Ancient era is from beginning of the time till 1600 AD. Here, people used leaves, mud, and cold water to treat wounds. Here are some of the eminent people who led to the evolution of medicine during this period. So the first person is Hippocrates. We call him as father of medicine, and his document describes about the methods of preparation of vegetable drugs, that is drugs extracted from vegetables. Other than this, gargles, ointments, and pessaries. Theophrastus is known as the father of botany. He dealt with medicinal properties and uses of herbs. Mithridates, known as the father of toxicology, studied about the adverse effect on plants. And Cosmos and Damian were considered as saints of pharmacy and medicine. It is because they practiced medicine and surgery absolutely at free of cost during that period. Cosmos and Damian were considered as saints of pharmacy and medicine. So at first, dosage form was made by using honey and syrups, where honey and syrups act as a vehicle for the drug. So now moving on to the empiric era. Empiric era is between 1600 to 1940. It is the time where allopathic medicine had its recognition. Benjamin Franklin started the first hospital pharmacy at 1751. And industrialization era. Industrialization era is between 1940 to 1970. The development of medicines began. Rapid mass production of medicines were followed due to the development of industries. Standardization, biologically prepared products, complex chemical synthesis, and increased use of parenteral medication were all a part of this period. Here, parenteral medication refers to injection and vaccines. Okay, and moving on to the patient care era, it starts from 1970, and till now this patient care era is being followed. So the beginning of this era concentrated more on research and development of new medicines. There were a lot of adverse reaction to drugs, thereby drug review and drug monitoring arose. And the last is biotechnology and genetic engineering. So this is the upcoming era. So genetic engineering, we commonly known for its genetic modification. It is the manipulation of an organism's genome. DNA replication, DNA sequencing, and cloning can be done using biotechnology. So it led to easy and cheaper medicines like insulin. So why do most people prefer allopathic therapy rather than other therapies? It is because the onset of action is quick. For example, when we take a paracetamol, say Dolo 650, it quickly reduces the body temperature and it also acts as a powerful painkiller, whereas you can't expect this quick action in other therapies. And allopathic medicine also contain organoleptic properties. Here, organoleptic properties refer to pleasing appearance and palatability of pharmaceutical dosage forms. For example, paracetamol syrups like crozine and calpol, piperazine citrate syrups, which is used to treat worm infection in children, they all have a very pleasing appearance and flavor to attract the pediatric administration. So we add green color for mint flavor, pink color for strawberry flavor, red color for cherry flavor, which seems to be pleasing to our senses. And not only this, it is also easy to handle and it contains different routes of administration. So we can either give it orally or insert it into body cavities or inject into the body as parenterals. So in case of unconscious patients and all, you can administer as parenterals. Okay, and unlike other therapies, in allopathy, surgical problems are handled very technically and the success rate is high. Specific diagnosis and treatment is available for particular disease and is very precise. So when we take other therapies like homeopathy, they only treat according to the symptom of the disease, but not according to the specificity of the disease. But in allopathy, specific diagnosis with specific treatment is available for a particular disease, and it will be very precise too, which is a major advantage in allopathic medicine. It also plays as a vital role in acting as quick painkillers, sedatives, antidotes, etc. Here, antidotes refer to neutralize the poison present in the body. So through vaccines, we have successfully controlled to a large extent some of the deadly diseases like smallpox, polio, tetanus, etc. And even now, COVID-19 can be successfully controlled by vaccination, which we'll be talking in upcoming slides. Okay, and not only this, life expectancy is also increased due to allopathy. And these are the major classification of dosage form. So dosage form in allopathy exists in three major states, starting from solid, liquids, semi-solids, or even sometimes it is present as semi-liquids too. So under solids we have powders, tablets, capsules, pills, granules, snuffs, tooth powders, implants, capsules, etc. And under liquids we have mixtures, elixirs, suspensions, emulsions, lotions, liniments, mouthwashes, gargles, parenterals, ear drops, eye drops, nasal drops, etc. And under semi-solids we have ointments, pastes, jellies, suppositories, plasters, pessaries, and creams. And now let's discuss on some side effects of allopathic medicine. So most medicine do have some side effects in allopathy. So mostly the side effects will be temporary, but it can go permanently also when we take for a longer duration. Okay, and it can also affect the immune system of the patient. For example, when a 12-year-old child, when he or she is administered continuously with medicines for a simple cold or fever, since it is a growing stage where the child acquires immunity by fighting against the disease, when we continuously administer the child with all allopathic medicines, it can affect the immune system of the child. Okay, and it might quickly not and to patient rely on medicines for lifelong to keep their BP and diabetes at check. Okay, and the interactions between two or more reactive substances can lead to change in physical, chemical, therapeutic property of the drug, which we commonly call it as incompatibility. So here, since allopathic medicines are highly reactive and when they are taken in wrong combinations, like when a person goes to cardiologist for a heart disease, okay, and the same person goes to another doctor for some other diseases, and suppose medicine what he takes goes antagonistic with each other, okay, this might result in incompatibility of the medicine. So incompatibility of the medicine may result in mutual decomposition, precipitation, even sometimes explosion, deflagration. Deflagration means combustion of the drugs, okay, and liquefaction, dissociation of ingredients. Moreover, it can affect the safety, efficacy, and quality of the medicine. And now let's see some of the very commonly used medicines and some of their side effects too. So first is paracetamol. The full form of paracetamol is para-acetaminophenol. And here in para-acetaminophenol, the acetyl group is present in the para position of the phenolic group. Chemistry students might understand this. Okay, and it is used as simple analgesic and antipyretic. Here analgesic refers to painkiller and antipyretic refers to decrease in body temperature. So these are the two properties of the paracetamol or mechanism of the paracetamol. Okay, and continuous intake can result in liver damage, ulcer, kidney problems. It is also reported to cause stomach pain, loss of appetite, constipation, etc. for a short duration. Fine. And NSAIDs, again, it is a very commonly used drug. We commonly call it as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So the mechanism behind is they block coenzymes and reduce prostaglandins throughout the body, and as a consequence, ongoing inflammation, pain and fever will be reduced. Stomach ulcers, dizziness, headaches, indigestion, allergic reactions, facial swelling, bleeding, wheezing, and skin rash are some of the short-term effects of NSAIDs. And peptic ulcer, renal failure, even sometimes stroke, myocardial infarction, meaning heart attack, atrial fibrillation are some of the long-term effects of NSAIDs. Okay, some of the examples are ibuprofen, aspirin, diclofenac. So these are the commonly used medicines under NSAIDs. Fine. And moving to antacids. So antacids generally they can be present even as syrups or tablets. So they are generally bases that are used to neutralize the excess of HCl present in the gastrointestinal tract. It prevents acidity, relieves heartburn and indigestion. If taken at larger amount, they can alter the pH by increasing the alkalinity of the blood. So when there is an alteration in pH of the body, this will affect the whole system's function. Okay, and it causes belching, swelling of feet, ankles and hands. So here magnesium, calcium, aluminum are some of the common ingredients used in antacids, where products containing magnesium cause diarrhea, products containing calcium or aluminum cause constipation, and intake of large amount of antacids containing aluminum can lead to calcium loss ending in weak bones, that is osteoporosis. Okay, and examples of antacids are Pepto-Bismol and Gelusil. Fine. And BP tablets. So some of the common examples or commonly used tablets are Valsartan tablets, Amlodipine tablets, propranolol. Okay, so the mechanism is they act as diuretic. They are usually given for increased blood pressure, where the mechanism is to decrease BP. And beta 2 and other blockers also present. Fine. The side effects of BP tablets are diarrhea or constipation, dizziness, erection problems, feeling nervous, feeling tired, weak, drowsy, headache, lack of energy, etc. And metformin. So metformin, it is a drug given as the prescription to treat diabetes mellitus type 2. And it is used to decrease hepatic liver glucose production, thereby to decrease glucose absorption and to increase the target cell sensitivity. Long-term use can cause anemia, can also block absorption of vitamin B12, causing anemia. So now, not only this, medicinal errors are also an important source of harmful effect of medication. So error in diagnosis, prediction and treatment can lead to a medication error. For example, prescription errors like 0.004 milligram can be misread as 0.04 milligram, which increases the dosage by 10 times. So sometimes some of the radioactive drugs are given only in 0.00 levels. Okay. Now, when there is an error in reading, this can increase or decrease the dosage by many times, which is going to be very harmful for the patient. And sound-alike drugs like prednisone can be misread for prednisolone. Wrong dosage can also lead to a medication error. Fine. And so these are the examples of sound-alike drugs. So prednisone and prednisolone sounds alike, right? So here, but both of the mechanisms are very different from each other. Where prednisone acts for kidney disorder, and prednisolone is an antiviral drug given. Okay, and this can also lead to a medication error. So as you see, can also look alike. But the mechanism will be different and the name also will be different. But this can also lead to a medication error. So now let's talk about some of the factors influencing the drug. Only a less amount of dose due to less body surface area and increased body water content in the body. Similarly, a normal adult requires a good dose for the action of the drug. Okay, and even elders require only a less amount of dose due to decreased functioning of kidney and liver system. And based on body weight, if we see, for example, a 650 mg tablet, it would be very accurate for a 60 kg person, whereas it would be more for a 40 kg person and less for a 85 kg person. And based on body surface area, the dosage of the drug would be very exactly measured using this body surface area. So we have so many different rules to calculate a person's body surface area. They have high lipid content and low water content, whereas males have high water content and low lipid content. Thereby, they need a greater dose when compared to females. So, males generally need a higher dose when compared to females. And based on route of the administration, orally a person needs a higher dose because the drug has to pass through the GIT, that is gastrointestinal tract, and there some has to be absorbed by and some will go to liver and some will be defaciated. So a bit of a larger amount of drug is needed when taken orally. But when taken subcutaneous, the amount of dosage form should be less when compared to oral. And in when given intravenously, it should be given, the dosage should be very less than oral and subcutaneous too, because in intravenous the medicine is directly administered into the bloodstream. Okay, and based on time of administration, for example, when we give a sedative means they induce sleep. Okay, and morning a higher dose will be required when compared to night, because a natural hormone melatonin will be secreted at night, which stimulates sleep. And based on presence of disease, a nervous disorder person requires only a less amount of dosage, and a kidney problem patient or a liver affected patient will also require only a less amount of dose. Okay, and if we see based on emotional factors, females require only a less amount of dose because they are very emotionally sensitive than males. And based on frequency of administration, it is based on half-life of the drug. Half-life means time required for completion of half of the drug to be administered. That is administered. Okay, and now we will see about a tragedy that occurred due to a medication thalidomide. So, in a post-war, when sleeplessness was prevalent, thalidomide was marketed around the world and was used as tranquilizers and sleeping pills. At that time, 1 out of 7 Americans took them regularly. So it is the only non-barbiturate sedative known at that time. Sadly, it resulted in a tragedy, uh, and this resulted in the start of drug control and drug monitoring system. That is, now we call it as Food and Drug Administration (FDA). So thalidomide first entered the German market in 1957 as the over-the-counter remedy based on the maker's safety claims. So over-the-counter remedy means drugs that can be sold without any prescriptions. Okay, they advertise their product as completely safe for everyone, including the mother and the child, even during pregnancy, as it as its developers could not find a dose high enough to even kill a rat. So this was the reason that they told this thalidomide is completely safe. But then by 1960, thalidomide was marketed in 46 countries with sales nearly matching to those of aspirin. So it has really a huge amount of marketing done using thalidomide. And shortly after, the drug was sold in Germany, between 5,000 and 7,000 infants were born with phocomelia. So phocomelia means malfunction of limbs. Throughout the world, about 10,000 cases were reported. Only 50% of the 10,000 survived. Their effects included deformed eyes and hearts, deformed alimentary canal and urinary tracts, blindness and deafness. And it led to a more prevalent occurrence of unanticipated and often serious drug adverse reactions. In 1961, the so-called harmless compound produced babies with birth defects. The drug interfered with the baby's normal development, causing many of them to be born with phocomelia, resulting in shortened, absent, or flipper-like limbs. So here is the picture of the child with phocomelia. And so the thalidomide tragedy is one of the notable tragedies that occurred in allopathic medicines. Okay. Now coming on to an entirely new topic, vaccines. Okay. Vaccines is a biological preparation that provides active acquired immunity to a particular infectious disease. A vaccine rapidly contains an agent that resembles a disease-causing microorganism and is often made from weakened or killed forms of the microbes, its toxins, or one of its surface proteins. So vaccines are generally substances that is often made from weakened or killed form of microbes. So that's why a newborn child is administered with a number of vaccines to protect the newborn from various diseases uh, like tetanus, polio, etc. And if we see the evolution of vaccines, Edward Jenner is considered as the founder of vaccinology in the West at 1796. He inoculated a 13-year-old boy with cowpox virus and developed immunity against smallpox. In 1798, the first smallpox vaccine was developed. So Edward Jenner, what he did was he separated the cowpox virus. Since cowpox virus and smallpox virus belong to a same family, when the cowpox virus is injected into a 13-year-old boy, it was found that the boy developed resistance against smallpox, and hence on 1798, smallpox vaccine was developed. And in 1885, Frenchman Louis Pasteur developed first virus vaccine, rabies. And between the year 1920 to 1926, development of vaccines for tuberculosis, diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough were developed. And in 1944, first vaccine against flu was developed. And between the year 1950 to 1960, first combination vaccines was developed. So Combination vaccines are two or more vaccines that are given at a single shot. Okay, for it is an example. So here DTP or we can call it as DPT also. So it is an example of a combination vaccine administered to infants for immunity against diphtheria, tetanus, or pertussis or whooping cough. Okay, and in 1986, first genetically engineered vaccine for hepatitis B was developed. And so you can see the graph, and this graph shows the declination of tetanus disease before and after vaccination. And this graph shows the reduction rate of cholera before and after development of vaccine. So this shows the importance of vaccine and importance of getting vaccinated. Okay, and yeah, importance of vaccine. Vaccine activates our immune system. Many dangerous infectious disease can be prevented in this simple and effective way. The aim of vaccination is to obtain the immunity without any risk of having the disease. So these are the importance of vaccine. And so moving on to the current trend, COVID-19. So COVID-19 disease is caused by a corona SARS-CoV-2 virus. SARS here refers to severe acute respiratory syndrome. And COVID-19 spreads through contact with another person who have been already infected. It is predominantly a respiratory illness that can affect even other organs too. Symptoms appear from 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. So it was WHO announced on 12th March 2020 that COVID-19 is a pandemic. And if we see the symptoms of COVID-19, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty in breathing, fever or chills, muscle or body aches, loss of taste or smell, vomiting, diarrhea are some of the symptoms of coronavirus. And nowadays, COVID-19 also shows some of the unusual symptoms like loss of appetite, fatigue, malaise, etc. are also seen in the second wave of coronavirus. And how do some of the COVID-19 vaccines compare? So here are some of the companies that produce regimen for vaccines, which with different approaches. So let's see what are they. Based on RNA approach, Pfizer and Biotech Company has invented a two-dose regimen which could be stored at minus 80 to minus 60 degrees centigrade for 6 months and 2 to 8 degrees centigrade for up to 5 days. Okay, and Moderna has also invented a two-dose regimen which could be stored between minus 25 to minus 15 degrees Celsius for 6 months and 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for 30 days. And based on viral vector approach, Oxford Institute AstraZeneca has invented a two-dose regimen, that is what we call it as Covishield, which could be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade for 6 months, and Gamaleya Institute invented Sputnik V, a two-dose regimen which could be stored at minus 18.5 degrees centigrade at liquid form and 2 to 8 degrees centigrade at dry form. And Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which comes under Johnson & Johnson company, invented a single dose regimen. So it is the only single dose regimen. All other doses are double doses or one dose with a booster dose. Okay, which could be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade for 3 months. And based on inactivated virus approach, Sinovac and Sinopharm company has invented a two-dose regimen which could be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. And Bharat Biotech in India invented Covaxin, which is a two-dose regimen which could be stored between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. And based on protein-based approach, Novavax has invented a two-dose regimen which could be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. So, so let's discuss on majorly used vaccines, Covaxin and Covishield uh, in India. Okay, and Covaxin is an inactivated SARS-CoV-2 virus vaccine developed by Hyderabad-based Bharat Biotech. It is again a two-dose regimen administered 4 weeks apart, and it should be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. So, Covaxin uses an inactivated virus approach. So when you get Covaxin, you are basically getting injected with actual SARS-CoV-2 virus particles which are inactivated. So an inactivated virus won't cause any infection in your body. It is basically powerless. But it helps a body to make SARS-CoV-2 specific antibodies and to fight against the disease. And Covaxin has shown more than 81% satisfactory result. So coming on to the mechanism of an inactivated virus is simple. When Covaxin is administered, the T cells and B cells detect the inactivated virus particles. T cells are responsible for producing memory T cells that remember the virus, and B cells are responsible for producing virus-specific antibodies, preparing our body to fight against infection. So moving on to Covishield. Covishield is a chimpanzee adenovirus vaccine. Adenovirus are viruses that belongs to a common cold strain of viruses developed by Oxford AstraZeneca and manufactured by Serum Institute of India. And it is again a two-dose regimen administered 4 weeks apart, and it is stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. And it has shown 62% satisfactory results. And if you see the mechanism, adenovirus used in Covishield is modified to carry a coronavirus gene. So adenovirus is a type of common cold virus. When Covishield is administered, the adenovirus enters the living cell and the modified gene instructs the cell to produce SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins and display it on the surface of the cell. These spike proteins are then detected by the T cell and B cell in a body and starts building immunity. So Sputnik 5. Sputnik 5 is also a newly invented vaccine developed by Gamaleya Institute. So it uses a two-fold type virus engineered to be harmless as a carrier to deliver a small fragment of the coronavirus to the body, safely exposing the body to the part of the genetic code. In this way, it allows to recognize the threat and learn to fight it off without the risk of becoming ill. And being vaccinated with this, the body starts produce antibodies especially tailored for coronavirus. Now the immune system is primed to fight coronavirus when it encounters it for real. Okay, and before vaccination, one should eat well and take medicines only if prescribed ahead of vaccination. People with BP or diabetes need to keep these in check, and a complete blood count CBC, C-reactive protein CRP, or immunoglobulin E IgE levels can also be checked. And those who have been infected in the last 1.5 months with corona are also advised to take the vaccine right now. This is because since it's a common question whether infected person can take up the vaccine. So the answer is of course yes, because it improves the immunity of the person. Okay, and after vaccination, pain at injection site and fever are common. Chills, fatigue may be expected, but it can go within a few days. So these are some of the vaccine side effects. So though vaccine side effects are present, they can go within few days. And the individuals who can't receive the vaccine, so generally high allergic person and any bleeding disorder is present, or if the if a pregnant woman or a breastfeeding women cannot be administered with COVID vaccine, and any other serious health related issues, uh, that should be consulted with the regarding doctor before taking the vaccine. Okay, so myths on COVID-19 vaccination. The COVID-19 vaccination is not safe because it is rapidly developed and tested. But but the truth is, COVID-19 vaccines are authorized vaccines proven to be safe and effective. Worldwide collaboration, funding, and progress in science and technology help to shorten the time frame on the development of vaccines. Vaccines should not be given to patients with blood pressure issues, diabetes, HIV, kidney problems, or cancer survivors. But the truth is much opposite to the myth. That is, it is said that people with blood pressure issues, diabetes, HIV, kidney problems, or cancer should be the first ones to get vaccinated on priority due to their health conditions. And don't get vaccinated during your periods because your immunity is low. But the truth is, your menstrual cycle does not affect your immunity or the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine. Uh, don't get vaccinated. I have already had COVID once. Why vaccinate now? As I already said, people who had already gotten sick with COVID-19 may still benefit from getting vaccinated due to the severe health risk associated with COVID-19 and the fact that reinfection with COVID-19 is again possible. So people are advised to take a COVID vaccine even if they have been infected with COVID-19 before. So COVID-19 vaccine can make you infertile. There is no scientific reason that proves or suggests that COVID vaccine affect the fertility at all. And so I thought of also sharing a home treatment protocol for COVID-19. So if you have the symptoms of COVID and if the RT-PCR test shows positive, here is a home treatment protocol where the patient can be managed at home itself. So at first, do not panic. Remember, in 80% of the cases, the disease is likely to be mild and it can be managed at home, as nowadays a bed at hospital right now is a nightmare. So first wave, so first have an online consultation with a doctor, and in most of the cases, the patient can be managed with a home treatment protocol. So what does the home treatment protocol say? So number one is medical treatment and monitoring, and number two is isolation of the patient. So for medical treatment and monitoring, you might need a few devices. That is, you need a thermometer, a pulse oximeter, a BP apparatus, gloves and mask. So you need to be monitoring pulse, blood pressure, temperature, oxygen saturation, respiratory rate every 8 hourly and record it in a paper or on an Excel sheet and inform your doctor daily. And so we might be knowing to check the temperature with thermometer, and so I'm not going to explain that in detail. I'm going to be speaking about the pulse oximeter in a bit detailed manner. So it is a small device used to check the oxygen saturation level of the blood. So this device is available at all pharmacy and even at online. You can even apply online also. So to check first, rest the patient for 5 minutes before measuring oxygen saturation. Remove any nail polish or false nails before measuring. Step 2. Warm your hands and switch on the pulse oximeter and insert the middle or index finger into the groove given. So the machine or the apparatus has a groove. So you have to place either your middle or your index finger inside the groove given. So ideal oxygen saturation should be more than 94%, generally at 98 or 99. In case if the oxygen saturation is between 92 to 94, the patient should be monitored every 4 hourly. In case the oxygen goes below 92, inform the doctor immediately and the doctor will do the required needs. And ensure the patient takes a plenty amount of water or warm liquids in between, that is in between 2 to 3 liters daily. So some warm saline gargles will also help. It soothes the throat and also reduces viral load in the throat. And in case of any dry cough, the patient can be administered with lozenges like Strepsils, Alex, etc. Take vitamin C 500 mg twice a day and zinc tablet once a day. Take a paracetamol every 6 to 8 hourly. And remember, antibiotics are not usually needed. It is because COVID-19 it is a viral disease. You no need antibiotics for the treatment of viral infections.